You're sitting quietly in a room, alone, when a thought pops into your head. It's not a new thought, just a fleeting one. But today, something about it feels different. This time, it's followed by another thought, and another, until your mind is spinning with the realization that something is missing. Something is deeply wrong. You've worked so hard to shape your life, to build an identity, a reputation, a future. But in this moment you wonder, is this really who I am? You've spent years convincing yourself that your worth is defined by your success, your image, the parts of you show the world. But deep inside, you feel a gnawing discomfort, a sense of being incomplete. And for the first time, you begin to wonder, what if all this striving, all this pushing for perfection, has been a mask? What if the version of yourself you've carefully constructed is only half of who you are? You find yourself asking, what if there's more to me? What if, hidden beneath all the layers, there's a side I've been ignoring, rejecting, even fearing? The thought lingers, and it brings with it a strange sense of unease. You begin to realize, there is a darker side to you, a side you've been running from your entire life. It's at this moment that Carl Jung's concept of the shadow begins to make sense. The shadow, that part of us that is hidden, repressed, and pushed away. The things we deny about ourselves, the feelings we suppress, the desires we bury. For so long, you've kept this part locked away, afraid of what it would mean if others, or even you, saw it. But here's the paradox. The more you try to deny the shadow, the more powerful it becomes. It shapes your decisions, your fears, and your self-worth without you even realizing it. It's like a silent partner in your life, dictating your thoughts, your actions, and your insecurities. The more you push it away, the more it controls you. But here's the most unsettling thought of all. What if, by not facing the shadow, you are perpetuating the very disconnection, pain, and fear you've been trying to escape? What if embracing the darkness within you is the key to unlocking your true self, to finding freedom and authenticity? What if the very thing you've been running from is actually the source of your power? Jung's theory of the shadow forces us to confront a paradox we rarely face. We often believe that our struggles, our pain, our imperfections, our weaknesses, things to be fixed, avoided, or erased. But Jung, along with many other thinkers, believe that these darker aspects of ourselves are not only inevitable but necessary for growth. They are part of what makes us human. And so, the question emerges, what if your self-perception, the very image you hold of yourself, is incomplete because you've been avoiding the parts of you that you fear? What if the key to living authentically, to breaking free from the chains of doubt and insecurity, lies not in controlling or denying the shadow, but in embracing it? What if the darkness you've been avoiding is actually your source of strength? This is the great question. How can we begin to embrace our own darkness, without letting it consume us? How do we integrate the shadow within us in a way that doesn't lead to destruction, but growth? To answer this, we must first understand why we fear the shadow, and why we've been taught to reject it. We must look deeper into the psychological forces that shape our self-image, our fears, and our relationships with others. In the next section, we'll explore the hidden problem, the psychological and philosophical roots of self-repression, and the societal pressures that encourage us to avoid our true selves. We'll explore how these forces shape us, how they impact our behavior, and why they create a disconnect between who we think we are and who we really are. To understand why we fear the shadow and why we suppress it, we need to dive into the psychological and philosophical roots of this issue. For far too long, we have been conditioned to view our inner darkness as something to be avoided, hidden, or fixed. But what if this reaction is itself part of a deeper, more insidious problem? The first root of self-repression lies in the cultural and societal pressures that teach us to be perfect. From a young age, we are encouraged to fit in, to measure up, and to align with the expectations of those around us. Society tells us that we must be happy, successful, attractive, and above all, in control. Anything that deviates from this ideal is seen as a flaw, something to be corrected, hidden, or ignored. Carl Jung referred to this as the persona, the mask we wear in society to conform to social expectations. The persona is not our true self, it is the version of ourselves that we believe others want to see. The persona is often carefully constructed to be accepted, liked, and admired. But Jung argued that the more we cling to this idealized version of ourselves, the more we lose touch with our true nature. The persona keeps us from facing the shadow because we are too busy trying to maintain a perfect, socially acceptable image. The perfection we seek is often a reaction to fear of judgment, fear of rejection, and fear of being found out as inadequate or unworthy. And this fear keeps us trapped in the cycle of self-repression. Jung's insight here is profound. The more we try to conform, the more we lose our sense of self. The persona becomes so dominant that it effectively shadows our real personality, leaving us disconnected from our true desires, passions, and emotions. But why do we fear the shadow? Why are we taught to avoid our darker instincts, emotions, and thoughts? The reason is tied to our survival instincts. As humans, we are wired to avoid conflict, discomfort, and anything that could lead to social exclusion. Throughout history, humans have relied on their communities for survival, whether for protection, resources, or social bonds. Being cast out from the group could mean death. And so, our minds developed a mechanism to avoid anything that could lead to rejection, the suppression of parts of ourselves that don't fit in. Jung saw this suppression as a defense mechanism, a way to protect ourselves from feelings of shame, guilt, or fear. But this repression has a dark side. It doesn't eliminate the shadow, it simply pushes it deeper into the unconscious. And while we may think we're free of these uncomfortable parts of ourselves, they continue to influence our behavior in ways we don't even realize. By denying these darker aspects of ourselves, we make them more powerful, because they operate in the unconscious. The more we suppress them, the more they emerge in unexpected ways, through anxiety, self-sabotage, relationship conflicts, or even physical illness. Jung argued that these unconscious forces are not inherently bad. In fact, they can be a source of great creativity, strength, and personal growth, but only if we are willing to face them head-on. The key to overcoming self-doubt, insecurity, and stagnation lies in embracing the shadow, rather than running from it. At the heart of self-repression lies a fundamental existential question: who are we, really? The persona is not the real you, it's the version of you you've created to survive in a world that demands conformity. But the shadow, the hidden parts of your psyche, is where your authentic self resides. It's where your true desires, passions, and potential lie dormant, waiting to be uncovered. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre have long argued that authenticity and freedom come from embracing the totality of the self, both the light and the dark. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the Overman, or Superman, is an ideal of a person who has transcended societal norms and embraced the fullness of their own being, including their shadow. The Übermensch doesn't deny their dark side, they integrate it, use it, and rise above the constraints of society's expectations. Sartre, similarly, argued that freedom comes from the realization that we are not confined to the roles society assigns us. He called this bad faith, the act of deceiving ourselves into believing that we are only the sum of our roles, our jobs, our relationships. True freedom, Sartre argued, is found in recognizing that we are constantly becoming, always evolving, and never fixed in a static identity. For both Nietzsche and Sartre, the path to true freedom and self-realization involves facing and embracing the parts of ourselves we fear the most. The shadow is not a burden to be discarded but an integral part of our identity. To reject it is to reject a vital part of who we are. Self-actualization, the process of realizing our fullest potential, can only happen when we integrate the shadow. Our culture also plays a significant role in how we view the shadow. Society is structured in a way that rewards conformity and punishes deviation from the norm. Media, social expectations, and even family structures encourage us to present an idealized version of ourselves, perfect, successful, and well-adjusted. Anything less than this is deemed flawed, wrong, or unacceptable. The irony here is that the shadow doesn't make us flawed, it makes us whole. The more we suppress it, the more fragmented we become. The shadow holds the key to our authenticity, creativity, and emotional depth, but society's rigid standards prevent us from acknowledging it. We are taught to be good and righteous, at the expense of being true to our full selves, including the aspects of us that we deem ugly or imperfect. This cultural conditioning, along with our fear of rejection, leads to the denial of the shadow. We hide behind our personas, terrified of being seen for who we truly are. But as Jung suggested, this denial only intensifies the power of the shadow, which inevitably reemerges, often in destructive ways. We've explored the psychological roots and societal pressures that drive us to repress our shadow. But now, we must look deeper, beneath the surface of our daily lives, into the unseen consequences of this repression. When we refuse to acknowledge the darkness within us, it doesn't simply disappear. It sinks into our unconscious, silently shaping the way we act, think, and feel, often without our awareness. The most insidious aspect of this process is that the consequences of self-repression are not immediately visible. They are subtle, creeping into every corner of our lives, affecting our relationships, our self-worth, and even our physical well-being. One of the most immediate consequences of repressing the shadow is the emotional and psychological toll it takes on us. The constant underlying anxiety, when we suppress aspects of our personality that we deem bad or undesirable. We carry a constant anxiety with us. The fear of being found out, of being seen for who we truly are, creates a tension that lingers beneath the surface. This isn't just abstract anxiety, it's a psychic wound that keeps us on edge, always anticipating judgment or failure. We fear that if we allow ourselves to feel, to express, or to be fully authentic, we will lose the acceptance and love we so desperately seek. The emotional split. Repressing the shadow often creates a split in the self. We begin to reject parts of ourselves, the anger, the jealousy, the fear, and even the deep, unacknowledged desires that make us human. But instead of eliminating these aspects, we push them down, which results in an emotional fracture. We become like two people, one who is the socially acceptable mask, and another, buried deep within, who yearns to be free. This internal conflict manifests in emotional numbness, disconnection, and existential despair. Projection. One of the most damaging consequences of repressing the shadow is projection, the tendency to project our own denied qualities onto others. For instance, if we deny our own anger, we may see anger everywhere, and judge others for being irrational or too aggressive. The qualities we refuse to accept in ourselves, we see as flaws in others. This projection not only distorts our relationships, but it also creates a false sense of self, a self that is built on denial rather than truth. Chronic depression. Jung believed that depression often arises from a lack of integration with the shadow. When we repress aspects of ourselves, we are essentially cutting ourselves off from our true source of energy. The vital forces that should flow through us become stagnant, leading to feelings of hopelessness, disconnection, and an overwhelming sense of meaninglessness. The longer we ignore the shadow, the more disconnected we become from the richness of our full potential. The shadow doesn't just affect our internal world, it spills out into our relationships. In authentic connections, when we hide our true selves, we present a false version of who we are. Relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, become shallow and transactional. The deeper emotional and spiritual connections that form when two people are authentic with each other become impossible to create. We spend more time trying to perform in our relationships, fearing judgment and rejection, than we do in real connection. Unresolved conflicts. When we repress our anger, frustration, or resentment, we set the stage for conflicts to fester. These emotions don't disappear just because we suppress them. Instead, they remain active beneath the surface, ready to erupt when we least expect it. Small misunderstandings or hurt feelings can snowball into explosive arguments, often with no clear explanation for why they happen. We may find ourselves arguing over trivial things, not because they matter, but because they act as outlets for the emotions we've long ignored. Codependency. Another tragic consequence of self-repression is the development of codependent relationships, where we look to others to fill the voids left by our own lack of self-acceptance. We cling to others, believing that our worth can only be validated through their love and approval. We fail to recognize that true intimacy and connection come from being whole and self-fulfilled, not from relying on someone else to complete us. In codependent relationships, we project our unacknowledged needs onto the other person, asking them to provide what we cannot give ourselves. This creates a cycle of dependence, where both parties are trapped in a dance of unconscious neediness. Self-repression doesn't just harm the individual, it has profound societal consequences. The perpetuation of social norms. The more individuals repress their shadow, the more they reinforce societal expectations. When people are not allowed to express their full humanity, they internalize societal norms, adopting a version of themselves that is acceptable to the world. This perpetuates a culture that prizes conformity over authenticity, and that devalues human imperfection. Society as a whole becomes less tolerant of differences and more focused on appearances, leading to widespread feelings of inadequacy and shame. Cultural suppression. The shadow is not only repressed on an individual level, but also at a collective level. Think about how certain emotions and desires are considered taboo or undesirable in society. Anger, desire, vulnerability. These are emotions that many cultures try to suppress or label as negative. When a culture represses the shadow, it creates an environment in which people feel unfree to express themselves fully. Art, creativity, and individuality are stifled, and the true essence of human expression is lost in favor of pleasing the masses. A society of anxiety and alienation. Jung warned that the repression of the shadow leads to a fractured society, where individuals are disconnected from their true selves and from one another. We are taught to be good and well-adjusted, but these labels are often masks. Behind the masks is a society drowning in anxiety, self-doubt, and existential fear. People are disconnected from their authentic selves and, by extension, from each other. This collective disconnection fosters alienation, a sense of isolation, and an overarching feeling that life has no meaning. The repression of the shadow has consequences on a deeper, more metaphysical level. Jung believed that the shadow wasn't just a personal issue, it was universal. It represented the parts of ourselves that we collectively deny, and if left unchecked, this repression would lead to the fragmentation of the human psyche. We can see the results of this fragmentation in society's obsession with materialism, perfection, and superficial success. Our collective shadow manifests in wars, inequality, and environmental destruction, as humanity attempts to control and dominate the natural world without acknowledging the deeper truths within ourselves. Jung's insight was clear: the only way for humanity to heal was for individuals to begin integrating their shadow. As each person faces their own darkness and embraces it, society as a whole will become more whole, more authentic, and more capable of confronting the existential crises that plague us. This is where the rebellion begins, the rebellion against the chains of self-repression, the rebellion against the societal pressures that force us to deny our true selves. It is a rebellion that calls us to reclaim authenticity, to break free from the masks we've worn for so long, and to integrate the parts of us we've been hiding. The first step in breaking free is stopping the escape. The shadow, as Jung suggested, is not something we can outrun. The more we repress it, the more it grows, and the more power it holds over us. Running from the shadow is the very thing that feeds its power. The moment we stop running and start facing it, we begin the process of integration. But how do we face the shadow? It begins with awareness, simply noticing when the shadow is influencing our thoughts, emotions, and actions. For example, the next time you feel resentment, guilt, or jealousy, instead of pushing those feelings away, sit with them. Ask yourself, what part of me is feeling this? What am I avoiding? You might find that anger is often masking a deep sense of inadequacy. Jealousy might be masking a fear of failure. Guilt may be covering a suppressed desire or need that you've long ignored. Each emotion that arises is an opportunity to look deeper into your unconscious mind. Don't run from what's uncomfortable. Instead, let the discomfort guide you toward understanding. When you stop running from your shadow, you begin to reclaim it, integrating it as part of your whole self. This isn't a one-time event but a continuous, evolving process. As you begin facing your shadow, another critical step in breaking free is relinquishing control. We often repress our shadow because we feel the need to control our identity, our emotions, and our experiences. The belief that we need to always be in control comes from deep-seated fear. Fear of what will happen if we let go, fear of what others might see, and fear of facing the parts of us we deem bad or weak. But here's the paradox: the more you try to control your shadow, the more control it has over you. The shadow can only be integrated when we surrender the need to control it. Think about it. When you allow yourself to feel your emotions without judgment, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and honest about what's beneath the surface, you are letting go of control. You no longer need to suppress your anger or fear because you've learned to accept them. This is not to say that you act on every impulse, but rather that you stop denying the existence of the emotions and desires that come from within. Vulnerability is the key to this process. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the bravery to be seen as you truly are. When you embrace vulnerability, you stop living in the lie that you must appear flawless or perfect. Instead, you step into your truth, knowing that to be human is to be imperfect, to be flawed, and yet to be whole. One of the greatest fears associated with the shadow is the fear of losing control. We fear that if we let our true selves be known, we will lose everything: our relationships, our success, our sense of belonging. But here's the powerful truth: you will lose everything that isn't real. You will lose the false identity you've constructed, the one that is based on what others think you should be. You will lose the need for validation, the constant pressure to prove your worth to others. And in losing all of that, you will gain yourself, your true, authentic self. The key to transforming fear into power is to stop seeing fear as an enemy. Fear is simply a signal, one that points to where growth can happen. It's an invitation to look deeper into yourself, to step into the unknown, and to trust that you can handle whatever comes. By embracing fear, you don't let it control you. Instead, you turn it into energy that propels you forward into your growth. The more you face your fears and uncertainties, the more resilient you become. And as you continue to face the shadow, you'll find that the fear begins to lose its grip. You begin to see that there is no real threat, only the invitation to evolve. The final step in breaking free is to reconnect with your inner truth. For far too long, you have lived with an identity shaped by external influences, the expectations of society, family, and culture. But the true you has always been there, hidden beneath the layers of doubt, shame, and fear. To reconnect with your true self, you must let go of the narratives that no longer serve you. The story you've told yourself about who you are, the one based on what others have said about you, or what you think you should be, must be questioned and rewritten. This process is liberating. It's about discovering who you really are, what you really want, and what values you want to live by. This isn't about fitting into some societal mold. It's about embracing your individuality and stepping into your own power. As you reconnect with your inner truth, you'll begin to see the world through a different lens. No longer will you be controlled by the judgments and expectations of others. Instead, you'll live from a place of authenticity and purpose. You'll trust your instincts, express your desires, and make decisions that align with your true self. The ultimate freedom comes when you accept yourself fully, both the light and the dark. Self-acceptance is not about denying your flaws. It's about recognizing that they are a part of you. You are not perfect, but you are whole. Perfection is an illusion, and when you embrace that, you free yourself from the constant pressure to control, to be good enough, and to be validated by others. Acceptance isn't passive. It's an active, courageous choice to say, I am enough, just as I am. When you stop running from your shadow, you realize that you can live authentically and still have a rich, meaningful life. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. The key to breaking free from the illusion of control is surrendering. When you let go of the need to control everything, you open the door to true freedom, freedom to be yourself, to embrace your shadow, and to move through life with a sense of peace and purpose. As you reflect on the shadow and the journey toward embracing it, the final, most profound realization will begin to unfold. Up until now, we've discussed the repression of the shadow, the consequences of avoiding it, and the process of integrating it into our conscious selves. But there is an even deeper truth that will fundamentally alter the way you see yourself and the world. The ultimate realization is simple, yet it carries profound implications. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your most valuable ally. The truth about the shadow is that it contains within it a tremendous source of power. We have been conditioned to believe that our flaws, our negative emotions, and our vulnerabilities are weaknesses. However, what if these parts of us are actually the very source of our strength? Carl Jung's exploration of the shadow was not about making us feel guilty or ashamed for harboring darker aspects of our psyche. On the contrary, he believed that the shadow holds the key to wholeness and personal growth. The parts of you that you suppress, your anger, fear, envy, and even your past traumas, are not things to be eliminated. They are pieces of the puzzle that complete the full picture of who you are. By embracing the shadow, you open up the possibility of becoming more whole, more authentic, and more powerful than you could have imagined. The energy and passion that were previously locked away in the shadow can be harnessed to fuel your creativity, courage, and resilience. Jung spoke of this process as integration, the idea that by accepting the shadow, you no longer have to live in opposition to it. The conflict between the light and dark aspects of yourself begins to dissolve, and in its place comes a harmonious union that enables you to live with more vitality, authenticity, and clarity. This leads to the most radical shift in perspective that you will encounter on your path to personal growth. Acceptance is the key to freedom. In a world that constantly tells us to be better, to be perfect, and to conform to external standards, it's easy to feel that we are never enough. We chase ideals of beauty, success, and happiness, constantly trying to fill the emptiness within by adhering to societal expectations. But this constant striving often leads to frustration and disillusionment, because it requires us to live in a state of perpetual self-rejection. True liberation comes when you accept yourself fully, imperfections and all. This is the final truth: you are already enough. You do not need to fight your shadow or suppress it. You need to embrace it as a vital part of who you are. When you stop rejecting the darker parts of yourself, you free yourself from the prison of constant striving and self-judgment. The moment you make peace with your shadow, you begin to live in alignment with your true nature. You stop living for the approval of others, stop chasing external validation, and begin to live for yourself. This is the paradox. The more you accept your imperfections, the more you can step into your fullest potential. In order to live a fulfilling life, you must embrace your wholeness, not just your strengths but also your weaknesses. The shadow represents the parts of you that have been disowned, the parts that you deem unacceptable or unworthy. But when you bring these parts into consciousness, when you integrate them instead of repressing them, you make them part of your whole being. This integration process requires deep honesty and courage. It means acknowledging that you are not just the good parts of yourself, the ones you show to the world. You are also the parts that you hide, the parts that are raw and real. These parts are not weaknesses to be eradicated but forces of potential waiting to be understood and harnessed. As you begin to integrate your shadow, you will notice a profound shift in how you experience the world. You'll feel more confident in your authenticity, less fearful of judgment, and more capable of taking risks. Your relationships will shift because you will no longer hide behind a mask, and your connection to your own desires, your sense of purpose, and your true self will become clearer than ever before. Jung's concept of the shadow is not one of mere acceptance, it is one of transformation. The shadow holds the potential for profound personal growth. But growth is not a simple process of acquiring more knowledge or skills. It is a transformation of the self, the integration of light and dark, the conscious and unconscious. By confronting the shadow, you are stepping into a new way of living. You are no longer a fragmented person, divided between the idealized self and the repressed self. Instead, you are a whole person, capable of embracing the full spectrum of your humanity. You are more resilient, compassionate, and empowered because you no longer fear the parts of yourself that once seemed like flaws. You understand them, you accept them, you grow from them. This transformation allows you to move through the world with a deep sense of peace and purpose. The external chaos and challenges no longer define you because you have found your inner strength. You no longer seek validation or approval because you are grounded in the knowledge that you are enough. The ultimate truth of Jung's work is this: the path to self-actualization is not about becoming something you're not, it's about becoming who you already are. To be whole, to be authentic, you must embrace the shadow. The shadow is the missing piece of the puzzle, the part of yourself you've hidden but that is vital to your full potential. When you no longer fear the darkness within, you begin to live in alignment with your true self. The more you embrace this darkness, the more you are free to live the life you are meant to live. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. You are no longer trapped in the need for perfection or external validation. This is the final liberation, freedom from the illusion of control, freedom from the need to be anything other than who you are. The shadow, once feared and repressed, becomes your greatest source of strength, power, and authenticity.